It's Chris, Sustainability Report, arch-usa.com, and we're down here at the Algix and Bloom facility with Ryan Hunt. And I started this thing off. I'm trying to figure out how to access the discussion because it's so overwhelming to see all of these products. Now, I know for sure you guys have seen me write about this shoe, the F22. I've written about this shoe. I had no idea that this shoe had parts of it that's made out of algae. So we don't know a lot. In the culture, we sit around, we buy all this stuff we consume, and we don't think about, how much we're buying and the demand that's out there and what it's doing to the environment. So what I want you guys to do is be introduced to Ryan, who's the CEO?
I'm the CTO.
CTO.
Co-founder.
CTO and co-founder of Algix and Bloom. So this is Ryan. Are you videotaping or are you looking around?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So welcome. So here we have our showcase. These are all customer brands of ours that are our customers and our partners, and they have adopted Bloom in the components of the shoes. So we see a lot of uppers. This is the first shoe we launched from Vivo Barefoot. This entire upper is a Bloom material. But then we also have, like in the Adidas shoe here, the green is the midsole. So this midsole runs the whole length of the shoe. So that's more of an inner part of the shoe. And then in other shoes like this one here, this is a Sailor shoe. This is a French brand. So here we have the midsole as well as the insole. So the entire insole also is using a Bloom material. So our whole goal is to use algae as a tool for environmental remediation. So we use algae to clean air and water pollution. We absorb CO2, nitrogen, ammonia, phosphates, phosphorus. We turn that into plant biomass, and then we bring that material here once it's dried, and we turn that into a fine powder, which you can see right here. So this is the process. So it starts off as a wet, kind of slurry or wet cake. We then dry it using thermal energy to a dry granule, and that's what we get here. Then we process it in this factory. So we turn it into a fine powder at a very specific particle size. That powder is blended about half and half with polymers. So in this case, we use a polymer that's an elastomer. It's kind of rubbery. And this is a close-up of it here, or this is a jar of it here. So this is really our product. This is called Bloom EVA. And we've got a couple different grades of this, but this is our most common and most popular product, and is being purchased by footwear brands like Adidas, Vivo Barefoot, Tom's, Billabong, a whole bunch of different brands. And they're using this to make insoles, midsoles, and even outsoles for a wide range of shoes. And this is an example. So how we get the algae is always a big question. So really our goal is to maximize the positive environmental benefit of the algae. Okay. So there's really two different ways we can go about it. One is proactive, one is reactive. So on the reactive side, we go out in the world and we see, hey, there's these big problems with algae blooms. You may have just saw 21 beaches, all the beaches in Mississippi are closed because of algae blooms.
Right.
There was a big algae bloom in Louisiana, Lake Pontchartrain, two weeks ago. Right. In fact, yesterday we just started harvesting algae in Lake Okeechobee in Florida, which is tied to the red tides that have been really significantly impacting the economy and manatees and people in Florida. Right. So these algae blooms are happening all over the country and all over the world. And so the first approach is, well, that's the low-hanging fruit. Let's go clean that catastrophe up. Let's clean up that algae and let's use it for something if possible. Right. And not all of it's good algae. NOAA, which is the government agency that manages this.
Real quick, you said good algae. I'm asking this question because when we go out to these lakes and different places, if we're going out and going fishing, and algae is already there, right?
Algae is a natural occurring thing.
It's already there, but it's not harmful.
It's not harmful in and of itself. It only gets harmful when it gets really, really dense and it starts to suffocate the fish that live in it.
Okay.
So it depletes.
That's when you can see it, like
this is when you can see it. When it gets this extreme, it starts being harmful to the environment.
Okay, and this
can cause fish kills because it sucks the oxygen out of the water at nighttime, and the fish can't breathe.
That's the toxic.
Well, they call it harmful algae. It's a bit of a misnomer. The toxicity is actually very rare. There are some very specific strains of algae under certain circumstances that can produce a toxin that can cause skin irritation.
Okay.
That's less than 1% of algae blooms. So there's a little bit of sensationalism in the media saying, "Oh, it's toxic." They're really referring to as harmful algae blooms. Okay. And when they say the word harmful, what they mean is it gets so bad that it basically It blocks all light out to other plants in this area.
So now you're losing oxygen
Oxygen and sunlight.
and sunlight.
So not only can the fish can't survive because there's no oxygen, other plants that might compete with this algae, they're blocked out because they're beneath this. So they get shaded out, and now and this becomes the dominant species. And then it starts to rot. And here's the big issue: when it really becomes toxic, usually what they're talking about is once it gets so bad that it starts to rot. Now it's decomposing. It's releasing sulfur, sulfides. I mean, it smells really, really, really bad. It'll bring a tear to your eye if you get near this thing.
Oh wow.
So this particular situation was last fall. This was in Fort Myers, Florida, and we work with a company called AECOM. They're a big government contractor. We leased them our algae harvesting technology. These are mobile platforms, which we'll see later. And those were brought down to this location. One harvester was set up here. It put an intake and it sucked all this algae out. And within 1 day, we were able to achieve this in 1 day.
Wow.
So complete restoration. So part of the business is, hey, let's go where there's an acute issue. Let's leverage the technology where we can solve a problem that's impacting people. These are $1 billion condos and there's $1 million yachts in Fort Myers, right? And no one can even get near the marina because it smells so bad because this is rotting. So step one is clean up the mess. Step two is, if there's a better way to collect this, like this algae actually came from Lake Okeechobee. It didn't start here in this marina.
Right.
It was washed down from all this fertilizer runoff from all the agricultural areas.
Oh, okay.
So the project that we just started with the Army Corps of Engineers with AECOM is actually at Lake Okeechobee. We're harvesting the algae, the water that has algae in it, but also has nutrients off that big lake.
Okay.
Before it runs down the canals and causes all these problems.
So you guys are able to take something, put it in the middle, kind of like a filter.
It's at the canal.
Right there at the canal.
Before it gets out. So there's locks.
I have a different question, but I want to get into kind of seeing everything.
Yeah.
It's really amazing to think about all the different products that you guys are possibly creating. But in regard to the sneaker industry, I'm almost offended that we know nothing about it. And I mean, we as in the people that are in the e-commerce side of it, the marketing side of it, all I see is Parley, recycled plastic, Parley. And I get it. I mean, I was in the military.
Which is great.
It's great. It's great. I mean, I remember we threw garbage over the fantail in the Navy, which is something nobody probably wants me to say on camera. But, you know, I know that's important, but you have these situations, especially now. I have to. And this is where I'm going with that. The rain, all the different rain that we've been having here in the South, all of this rain, as it starts to build up, it floods these kind of sewage treatment places.
And just agricultural areas.
In agricultural areas, all of those things, that runoff, that kind of
that
makes the
fertilizes.
algae, it fertilizes the algae.
the algae. So with the fresh water coming in, it reduces the salinity, so that the lower salinity is lower salt, and then the blue-green algae can thrive in that.
Okay.
So one of it is the dilution factor, but then the other thing is you're getting this load of nitrogen and phosphorus that's coming off these fertilized lands, the farmlands that are flooded. And instead of that fertilizer being used to grow crops, now it's been pulled into the water as it's been flooded for so long. There's been a lot of flooding. I don't know if you'll know this, there's a lot of flooding.
I mean, we noticed that on the way down.
Yeah, it hasn't been covered in the national media. There's like, I think it was like, I don't want to quote a number, but hundreds of square miles of flooded areas. And a lot of this is either flood zone or farmland.
Farmland and flood zone.
So lots of fertilizer and embedded in that soil, and that gets picked up in the water and then flushed out to the ocean, and then you get these big algae blooms happening.
All right, we're going to wrap this part up, and what I want to get to is to see the technology. I think the more people see, the more they'll start understanding. And what I really hope is that we decide to say, hey, we want you brands using, Bloom. And I'm going to ask you some questions about that. If the Bloom, if it can actually rebound in the same way, because it looks a lot like Boost. It looks a lot like the BASF. I won't say Boost because it's BASF, and it's one of their products. It doesn't belong to Lottie. All right, but it does look a lot like it. So I'll ask some questions about that because I know the sneakerhead side of things. Everybody's like, "Hey, does it perform? No, we're going to wear this stuff. Does it perform?" So we'll get back to that.
Okay.
I want to walk around and take a look, and we'll take some more pictures.
Great.